Hey guys, Tyler Ansman here with Tyler Ansman Performance. So today what we're gonna kind of talk about are lower body mechanics and what actually matters in terms of driving ball velocity. All right, so one of the conversations that we had kind of the other day in the facility, somebody asked about kind of what's actually happening at the back leg. Do you need to push off as hard as you can? And the answer is no, and actually that can be a really problematic cue. And so this is something that kind of pitchers for a long time were taught, and that a lot of those guys who were taught that back then are now teaching that to kind of the next generation. And it intuitively makes sense, but when you actually dig into the research, it ends up not making very much sense. So what we actually see when we talk about the back leg is that the ground reaction forces at the back leg, or in some cases kind of the drive leg impulse, it's measured differently in different kind of studies. But what they actually have found is that it generally is not associated with ball velocity, right? So it's either pretty homogeneous among the kind of high and low velocity groups and doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. What does make a difference is ground reaction forces at the lead leg and the direction of that force. So both vertically oriented forces, right? And kind of anterior to posterior direction at the lead leg also make a difference, okay? So when we're talking about the back leg, why is it problematic if we're pushing off as hard as we can? Why does that not tend to correlate with higher ball velocity? So I think it's a couple of reasons, right? I think one of the reasons is that when we do that, what it also showed in the study where they did drive leg impulse is that higher drive leg impulse was associated with lower kind of torso angular rotational velocity. And so we know that kind of upper torso rotational angular velocity is associated with ball velocity, all right? So the faster that this rotates, generally the higher ball velocity is, right? And so what tends to happen is if we're pushing off as hard as we can, we get to kind of this fully extended position. And so what that kind of means, we've kind of cashed out here and we're not able to kind of segment our pelvis and our torso to create that meaningful stretch and that elastic response is going to rotate the upper torso even faster, all right? And so what we've done is essentially we've kind of put a lot of effort in here, and then what we've done is we've kind of chunked this whole thing, not allowed it to be kind of segmented, where we can drive that kind of more effortless velocity because we're getting it from kind of an elastic response, rather than this kind of this feeling of this kind of higher effort, more muscular driven kind of lower body pattern that we're getting after. So I think those are kind of the big things when we're talking about the lower body. Are we pushing off as hard as we can? No, we're not. So there is probably this lower band where we need to be kind of at a minimum for it to be effective, but beyond kind of this acceptable bandwidth, if we go way above that, is that going to help us throw harder? Likely no, and that's kind of what the research is bearing out. And so I think what we're trying to do with the lower body is we're trying to set up this transfer into the torso, right? This meaningful stretch, again, it's going to differ a little bit from athlete to athlete, and the ability to kind of let the torso deliver the arm and have these segments kind of fire in order so that we're building that energy through the body like a wave, right? If we go ahead and push off, what we get is this kind of really muscular response. We get this stiffening of everything a little bit earlier. We're not able to kind of segment and kind of fire these things in order. So kind of a couple takeaways from this, right? The lower body, we need to, just as we do as a whole, we're gonna wind and unwind tension through the delivery, right? So the lower body, what we're doing is we're kind of setting up this linear interrotational piece where we're gonna stop and abruptly transfer that energy into the upper body, right? But if we get to a position where we can no longer segment these pieces, we've kind of eliminated our ability to kind of utilize this kind of elastic response and transfer the energy effectively through the body, all right? So the lower body is meant to set up the upper body, and the forces that are happening at the lead leg seem to be significantly more important than the ones happening at the back leg. So if somebody is telling you to push off as hard as you can, they're likely giving you bad information. You can kind of explain to them why. All right, if you got questions, feel free to drop them below. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.